In 1962, the U.S. pest control industry lobbied to reclassify boric acid, a $1 powder that eliminated cockroach colonies in 7 days, as a restricted use substance requiring a licensed applicator. Not because it was dangerous, because a $1 solution you could use yourself was incompatible with a $9 billion service contract industry. I documented the complete application system. It still costs $1. It still works. To understand what happened, you need to understand what American pest control looked like before 1960. In the 1940 seconds, and into the early 1950 seconds, boric acid was on the shelf at every hardware store in America. Not in the back, not behind the counter. On the shelf, next to the flour and the soap. Homemakers used it. Pest professionals used it. The U.S. military used it in barracks and field hospitals. Department of Agriculture Extension pamphlets distributed to American households described boric acid applications room by room, pest by pest. It was the standard. Not one of many options, and the standard. Because it worked, it was safe, and it cost almost nothing. Then the synthetic chemical era arrived. Between 1945 and 1960, a new category of products entered the American market: synthetic organochlorine pesticides. Chlordane, Aldrin, Dieldrin. Products that could be sprayed from a can, required no mixing, and killed on contact within seconds. The marketing was powerful. The science seemed conclusive. The industry that formed around these products was worth billions, almost immediately. But there was a problem built into the business model. A product that eliminated a pest colony permanently, that reached the queen, that broke the infestation cycle from the inside, was incompatible with a recurring service contract. If your pest problem ended, you stopped calling. If your pest problem was managed but never solved, you called every month. The distinction between eliminating an infestation and managing one is the entire business model of the modern pest control industry. And boric acid, applied correctly, eliminated infestations. It did not manage them. By the early 1960 seconds, industry lobbying groups representing professional exterminators and chemical manufacturers had successfully pushed regulatory bodies to reclassify boric acid, not to ban it outright. That would have been too visible. But to restrict it, complicate its purchase, and remove it from the casual hardware store shelf where any homeowner could reach for it on a Tuesday afternoon. The timing was not coincidental. 1962 was the year Rachel Carson published Silent Spring, the book that triggered public awareness of synthetic pesticide damage. The industry response to that book was not to promote safer alternatives. It was to double down on the professional exterminator model, where the chemicals were in licensed hands, and the homeowner's role was to write the check. Boric acid, the safer, cheaper, more effective alternative that required no professional, was inconvenient to that story, so it disappeared from the conversation. Not from existence, from the conversation. It is still at your hardware store. It is still $1 per pound. It still works exactly the way it worked in 1948. Here is what they tried to make you forget. Boric acid is a naturally occurring compound refined from borax, a mineral mined primarily in California and Turkey. It has been used as a pest control agent, a preservative, and an antiseptic for over 100 years. The U.S. government registered it as a pesticide in 1948, after extensive testing confirming that it was effective against household pests and safe for human exposure at application concentrations. It kills insects through two mechanisms that work together. The first is physical. Boric acid is crystalline at the microscopic level, fine, sharp particles that adhere to the waxy coating on an insect's exoskeleton when it walks through a treated area. The crystals damage that coating, which is the insect's primary defense against moisture loss. The insect dehydrates. It cannot develop resistance to this mechanism the way it develops resistance to chemical poisons. You cannot evolve your way out of physics. The second mechanism is why boric acid terrified the service contract industry. Transfer. When a forager cockroach walks through boric acid, it carries the compound on its legs and body back to the colony. Inside the nest, roaches groom each other, a behaviour called allogrooming. and share food through regurgitation. The boric acid spreads through the colony. It reaches the workers that never leave the nest. It reaches the queen. A can of spray that kills the roach you can see guarantees the colony sends more tomorrow. The queen, untouched in the wall, lays more eggs to replace the loss. An accelerated response to perceived threat. Within 2 weeks, the population is back. The spray was designed to produce exactly this result. Boric acid, placed correctly, does the opposite. It uses the colony's own behaviour against it. The foragers you never kill become the delivery mechanism that eliminates the colony you cannot see. This is why correct application is everything. Too much boric acid and insects avoid it. They can detect the concentration. Too little, and it has no effect. The correct amount is barely visible to the naked eye. A whisper of powder in the right location, not a visible white line. And this is why the 1,940 seconds homemakers who used it knew something that most modern homeowners do not. The product only works if you understand how the insect uses your house. Now let me make the economics concrete. The average American household with a recurring cockroach problem spends between $800 and $1,200 per year on professional pest control services, monthly visits, quarterly treatments, annual contracts. The boric acid required to permanently close a standard American kitchen to cockroaches costs under $5. Applied correctly once, it remains effective for months. Reapplication twice a year costs another $5. Annual cost with professional service, $800 to $1,200. Annual cost with boric acid, $10. If every American homeowner knew how to use boric acid correctly, the professional residential pest control market, which in 1962 was already worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and growing, would collapse. Not shrink, collapse. The chemical manufacturers had a parallel problem. A pound of boric acid at hardware store retail was $1. A can of synthetic roach spray was $6 to $12 and needed to be replaced every 2 to 3 weeks. On an ongoing infestation, that's $150 to $300 per year in product sales alone. Per household, a $1 product that solves the problem permanently generates exactly $1 in revenue. The industry does not survive on products that solve problems permanently. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is basic economics. The incentive structure of a service contract business model requires a problem that never ends. Boric acid was a product that ended the problem. The conflict between those two things was inevitable. What happened was not dramatic. There was no single meeting, no single decision. It was gradual. Trade publications stopped covering natural methods. Extension service pamphlets were replaced with commercial product guides. Hardware stores reorganized their shelves around the new branded spray category. And within a decade, the knowledge of how to use boric acid effectively had drifted out of common household practice. The product was still there, the knowledge of how to use it was gone. That knowledge is what this video is about. There are 6 applications. Each one addresses a specific function in the cockroach infestation cycle. All 6 together create what the 1,940 seconds pest literature called a closed system. A home that has no entry, no food signal, no breeding site, and no colony that can sustain itself inside the walls. Application 1. The colony transfer bait. This is the application that does what no spray can do: reach the queen. Mix 1 teaspoon of boric acid powder with 1 teaspoon of powdered sugar and enough water to form a paste the consistency of peanut butter. Place pea-sized amounts of this paste on small pieces of cardboard and position them in the locations where roaches travel at night but are rarely disturbed during the day. Inside cabinet hinges, behind the refrigerator, in the back corner, under the sink, along the toe kick of the stove, inside the space around the dishwasher. The sugar draws foraging scouts in. They consume the bait and carry the boric acid back on their bodies and in the food they share with nestmates through regurgitation. Within 72 hours, the compound is circulating through the colony. Within 7 to 10 days, it has reached the queen. The spray kills the scout you can see. This application kills the colony you cannot see. 2 critical rules. Place the bait where roaches travel, not where you see them standing still. Those are not the same locations, and do not disturb the bait after placing it. Disruption breaks the transfer chain before the compound reaches the nest. Replenish every 5 days for the first 3 weeks. Then once a month as maintenance. Application 2. The cabinet interior barrier. Using a squeeze bottle or a small puffer duster, apply a thin, barely visible line of dry boric acid powder along the back inner edge of every kitchen cabinet, below the shelf liner if you have one, directly on the cabinet floor if you don't. This is not a contact killer in this position, it is a transfer surface. Any roach navigating the interior of your cabinets, which happens every night in an infested home, invisible to you, walks through the powder and carries it back to the colony. The line should be thin enough that you cannot easily see it from a standing position. If you can clearly see a white stripe, you've applied too much. Insects will detect the concentration and root around it. Reapply every 90 days. After the infestation is eliminated, this becomes a passive maintenance barrier that intercepts any new scout that enters. Application 3. The pipe gap seal with pre-treatment. The gap around the plumbing pipe where it enters the wall under your kitchen sink is the primary cockroach entry highway in most American homes. In a standard construction home, this gap is between 1/4 and 1/2 inch wide, large enough for a cockroach to pass through easily, and present in virtually every home in the country. Before sealing this gap, pack a small amount of boric acid powder into the interior of the gap. Then fill with steel wool, which cockroaches cannot chew through, and seal over the steel wool with DAP cork. The boric acid treats any eggs present in the gap before you seal them inside the wall, and disrupts the pheromone trail that has marked this gap as an active entry route. The steel wool and cork close it permanently. Cost, under $3. Time, 15 minutes. This single application eliminates the primary structural entry point for cockroaches in most American kitchens. Repeat for every pipe penetration under every sink in the house. Application 4. The behind appliance perimeter. The floor perimeter behind the refrigerator, behind the stove, and along the baseboard adjacent to these appliances is a primary roach travel corridor. These are warm, dark, rarely cleaned spaces directly adjacent to the food signal. Roaches navigate these edges every night. Apply a thin boric acid line along the floor baseboard in these areas, the back wall behind the refrigerator, the side walls of the stove alcove, and the floor edges under the dishwasher. Pull the refrigerator out to do this properly. Yes, it takes 10 minutes. These applications last 90 days, and they address the single most active travel corridor in the kitchen without requiring you to see or find any individual insect. The powder sits there, invisible, and does its work while you sleep. Application 5. The void treatment. In a home with an established infestation, a significant portion of the colony lives inside wall voids, the hollow spaces between interior wall surfaces. These are inaccessible by spray. They are accessible by boric acid dust. Remove the cover plate from any electrical outlet on an exterior-facing or kitchen wall. Apply a small amount of boric acid dust into the void space behind the outlet box using a puffer duster. Replace the cover plate. The dust settles into the void and creates a contact barrier in the colony's primary sheltered space. Do this at 2 or 3 outlet locations in the kitchen and adjacent walls during an active infestation. Important: turn off the circuit at the breaker before removing any outlet cover. Apply the dust, let it settle for a few seconds, replace the cover, restore power. The whole process takes 5 minutes per outlet. The powder inside the wall remains active for months. Application 6. The maintenance schedule. This is the application most homeowners skip, and it is the one that determines whether the infestation ends permanently or cycles back in 6 months. After the initial system is in place, maintain it on this schedule. Every week, pour 1 cup of white vinegar followed by 1 cup of boiling water down the kitchen drain. This eliminates the organic biofilm that sustains roach breeding inside the pipe. The food source and moisture source that draws them to the kitchen drain in the first place. Every 5 days for the first 3 weeks. Replenish boric acid bait stations, then monthly. Every 90 days. Reapply cabinet interior boric acid lines and behind appliance perimeter dust. Every 6 months. Inspect all pipe gap seals for cracking or shrinkage, and reapply cork as needed. That is the complete maintenance requirement for a permanently closed home. 2 hours per year after the initial implementation. No service contract. No recurring fee. No reason to call anyone. One more thing worth understanding, because it comes up whenever boric acid is discussed in modern pest control literature. Cockroaches have developed significant resistance to synthetic chemical pesticides over the past 60 years. The same species that was easily killed by chlordane in 1955 now survives direct exposure to many modern synthetic compounds. This is well documented in entomological research. It is one of the reasons professional exterminators escalate from one product to another over time. Each product works until the local population adapts, and then the next one is deployed. Boric acid is not subject to this resistance development. The mechanism is physical, abrasion, and dehydration, not chemical poisoning. A cockroach cannot evolve its way out of losing moisture through a damaged exoskeleton. The same physical vulnerability that made boric acid effective in 1948 is the same physical vulnerability that makes it effective today. The chemistry hasn't changed, the insect hasn't changed, the physics hasn't changed. What changed was who was selling you the solution. Boric acid is at your hardware store right now. It costs between $4 and $6 per pound, enough for a complete home treatment and 6 months of maintenance. No license required, no service contract, no waiting for an appointment. The industry tried to make it inconvenient. They did not make it disappear. 6 applications, 1 ingredient, under $5. The gap under your kitchen sink sealed tonight. The bait station set before bed. The cabinet lines applied in 15 minutes. The drain flushed every Monday. Within 7 days, visible roach activity will drop significantly. Within 21 days, the colony will have collapsed. Within 30 days, you will not have seen a single roach. And the exterminator contract you've been paying $89 a month for will have become something you used to do. If you want this system applied to every common household pest, ants, flies, mice, mosquitoes, fleas, pantry pests, with the full 7-day implementation plan and seasonal maintenance calendar, it's all in the guide in the first pinned comment. $17. Everything in it costs under $20 to implement. If this was useful, subscribe. There are 60 years of buried knowledge to get through. See you in the next one.